This is a program about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Please listen.
I'm not a very nice person, and I think that might kind of deter some people from wanting to have anything to do because of and I know that I'm not a very nice person, and I think that might kind of deter some. I'm not a very nice person, and I think that might kind of deter some people from wanting to have anything to do with us because of me.
Most of us that had been in the Warrior Society and were Vietnam veterans, we knew what was going to happen.
It was like they were in my own head. They knew what I was thinking, what I was going to react. They'd done it themselves.
He can talk to all kinds of friends of his, but unless they've been there, they don't hear what he's saying. And I can respond to what he's been through because in a lot of ways, my war is real similar to his.
And it was such a relief for someone to say that we understand that you're not crazy. And they said, we'll help you. And you're okay. And we'll help you.
He was appreciative of what the society was doing for him and all, but he was a little standoffish. Probably needed to talk, but he wasn't ready to talk. As time went by, we would see less and less of him. He would become more withdrawn.
PTSD has been around for a very long time. There are writings for ages, for thousands of years, describing what we now understand to be PTSD. And there's a good reason for that. PTSD itself is wound into the brain circuitry that's there to protect us, there to tell us if something is to be feared, a place, a thing is to be feared. But what PTSD is a gross exaggeration of that then generalizes to many, many aspects of your life.
He was lost. He didn't carry himself like he usually does. He was just different, obviously. I didn't go to anger after seeing him like that. I think I went straight to fear because I thought, my God, if this is what PTSD is, I'm not going to have him much longer. And I remember thinking, you know what? If he can't come back in such a manner, in such a state, that my love and determination can't fix this, then just take him now. Just take him.
I first realized that he was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder was sitting in his hospital room.
I had had a really bad nightmare about what happened on Christmas, and I woke up in a pool of sweat.
That was hard because he moved like he was protecting himself. You could tell he was reliving things.
Yeah, I mean, it was the middle of the night, and I mean, she was like standing up looking at me.
How do you talk to them? How do you? Because we didn't even understand. I mean, we're not trained. They put him back together physically, but as far as all the wounds you can't see, they didn't do anything.
It's like, nothing wrong with me, I'm fine, I made it back, I'm alive. All the while, there's these things running around inside your head, like the feelings of guilt for killing somebody and the feelings of guilt for losing my point mate Herbie, those kinds of things. They're all running around, but they're deep inside you. And they're affecting everything you do, but you don't realize it. Because there's no outward sign. There's no flesh wound or any of that stuff, so.
They said I had a severe and acute case of PTSD. I had no idea what PTSD was. So they told me that probably I could go to a group and it would help. And I said to myself, son of a bitch, I don't need to sit around the table with a bunch of hairy-legged old boys spinning sea stories. I've spent 50 years trying to forget it, and now you want me to rehash it again?
So out of that 400, we lost 29 killed in action and about 3 times that in wounded. And it just wore on me. Watching guys that I knew very well just decay. So I was starting to get physically wore down, but much more so emotionally. Instead of staying in a bad situation, I wanted to actually do something, not just sit there and be pissed off about the cards he got dealt. I wanted to go find the cure. So with what I'd learned between the Army hospitals, my academic training, my combat training, I decided to get out of the Army and take a shot at grad school. Why not?
I was going to rehab in Washington, D.C. I remember the first time they came over.
We were actually the first people to go down to Walter Reed. And I had the honor of meeting soldiers who were 3 or 4 weeks out of Iraq.
And they asked me if I wanted to do hand cycling. I was like, hand cycling, what is that? Oh, it's a bike that you do with your hands. I was like, that doesn't make any sense.
These 2 girls were in our formation, and they were just wearing these old polos that said A.K.A. and one of the staff members asked, hey, who here's ran track or cross country before?
And I would introduce myself and I would say, are you going to do the marathon with us in November?
Are these people out of their mind? A marathon? Are they making fun of me or something? Hey, and I told them, do you see them coming again? Close the door, don't let them in.
And they look at me and they say, well, sir, I just lost my leg 3 weeks ago, I can't walk.
And so I raised my hand, and then they came over and talked to me, and they said, hey, you wanna come out to Miami? You wanna come do a marathon? And I was like, yeah, I guess, yeah.
Don't ask me how, but I signed up for the marathon. So here I go, did the marathon.
I believe it's one of the most important.
I'm going to stop right there for a second and weigh in on this particular problem. What a lot of people don't realize as far as the open society is that whenever you train these people to be basically killing machines, it takes a great deal of, I'm going to use the word tender loving care, to turn these people back around to the point that they become colonized, humanized, the way that they're supposed to, as far as having emotions and feelings, and being forgiving, and being proper out into the eyes of society. My particular father, James Jubby Jackson, and him being in World War II, being a drill sergeant, I think one of the biggest things that he found to have a relief valve on was music. He liked to play the banjo, he liked to play the guitar, he liked to play with the guys around in a circle, and it didn't matter if it was old country hymns or gospel hymns. That to him was his therapy towards getting involved in another world, to the point that he could forget all the problems that not only occurred during the war, but the problems pertaining to what had happened on the farm life here in Tennessee. It was an opportunity that he could reach out and become therapeutic. And I tend to wonder if a lot of them out there, even though they may not be musically inclined, if you can find something that they're good at, it doesn't matter if it's mechanic work, it doesn't matter if it's building something with a saw and a hammer and a nail, it doesn't matter if it's crocheting. If you can find something that they can use as a relief valve, that in and of itself is probably about the best healing mechanism that you can use on these people that has went through such trauma to the point that they have post-traumatic stress disorder. And of course, keep in mind, you can have trauma in your life and never be exposed to a battlefield. There's a lot of people that wind up being raped or robbed or wind up being involved in a major accident, that they have that post-traumatic stress disorder, that they never find that niche in getting quite over. And the reason why, I believe, is because they haven't found that release valve. My particular situation, with all the other close encounters of death that I have went through, my release valve is in the Lord, in Christ. And if I didn't have that release valve, I would fall apart. I would fall apart, and I would turn into something that I didn't even want to begin to fathom of that in which what I could possibly turn into, because of all the trauma, all the horror that has happened in my life. Not just physical horror, but also psychological horror. Whenever you have a community, a society, your whole government that basically turns against you the way that they have made. Whenever you have family members that is trying to punish you because of them distancing themselves from you, that in and of itself is terrifying. It's trauma. Whenever you have such insensitive society that nowadays could care less about your well-being. If I did not have that release valve, because I'm not a musician, occasionally I do mechanic work, or I do build stuff because it's something that I feel like that it's necessary as a need. But as far as me just sitting down and crocheting or sharpening a stick with a knife and chewing the fat, sitting around a corner and discussing things, I don't have that right now. I don't have that. And in a way, I probably need that. But as of right now, I just use God and the Lord Jesus Christ and the teachings of the Bible. And I guess I have found a new release valve recently by being able to document various programs like I'm doing right now and putting it on my YouTube channel and getting my message out to various people. I still feel effective. I still feel essential. I still feel like that I'm accomplishing something. Though a lot of times it's almost as if I'm taking one step forward and two steps back. I'm still proactive. I'm still moving. So that in and of itself, between the Lord and the teachings of the Bible and me doing what I'm doing right now with my YouTube work, has become my release valve. But the point that I'm trying to make is there's so many people out there that has not discovered their own weaknesses in how that they themselves need a release valve. And the sad thing about it is, and I'm fixing to make a very, very dramatic point, a lot of people think that they can depend upon people to be their release valve. You know, I love you, honey. Oh, I love you too. And this and that. And once they realize that this entity that they have depended upon in being their release valve has now fallen short of that in which what they actually need, then once more that particular person falls apart because they have made the wrong choice in their therapeutics, in their release valve, and now they no longer have that release valve to call upon. That's the reason why I call upon a supernatural release valve, a entity that I don't think will never, ever, ever fail me, because the Bible is very clear towards saying that he will be with us even until the ends of the world. In other words, he will be there with us and for us, supernaturally speaking, even through the thick and the thin. That is a release valve that will not fail you. Even your best dog that is very loyal to you, or your cat, or your parrot, could possibly fail you. Even some of the highest priced real estate, or your bank account, or your good health could fail you. But the entity that I'm talking about in a supernatural world will not fail you. And he promises us that he will not fail us. But there's so many people out there who need therapeutics, and they need some sort of security that they can hold on to. That way they don't fall to pieces. They don't wind up going postal on a lot of people that they shouldn't go postal on. Because this is the time right now, especially during the coronavirus, the pandemic, this is the time right now that we need good, sound, strong leadership, not broken, deteriorated, dilapidated leadership. This is the time right now that we need good, sound, strong leadership to be able to tell people the truth, but at the same time try to be decent and try to be humane about it. And we're not finding that right now in society here in America for some reason. And I don't know if it's just because the quality just is lacking, or if people out there just are not trying to develop their minds and their hearts in this fashion to the point of being able to have people that depend upon people in such of a degree like that. I don't know. But let's get back to the program and listen to some more about post-traumatic stress disorder, because a lot of people have stress disorder and they don't realize that they have it because something has went wrong in their life. They went through a bad relationship. They got fired. They feel bad about themselves. They have been abused or rejected or neglected in society in some sort of way, and they have this disorder and they don't even realize that they have this disorder. So many people out there that has never actually laid foot on some sort of a military compound war procedure has a level of post-traumatic stress disorder. There's different levels of it. Some people is so far out in left field, they may not never come back around. Some people is so broken and deteriorated that probably the only thing that's going to help them is medical therapeutics. But then there's others out there that just talking to them, being around them, engaging in some sort of release valve, helping to understand their feelings towards who they are and what they are, can make a big, big difference towards the success of the failures of an individual's life. So this is a very, very important program that people need to pay close attention to if we as a society are going to progress and heal ourselves through the Holy Spirit and go forward in life.
Parts of the returning warrior healing and sort of closure after combat is to be able to reunite with his battle buddies.
When I first encountered the VAC, I was not even a year out from my injury. I was about 11 months. I just got my first prosthetic. I didn't feel like me still. I feel broken still.
The Veterans Airlift Command was born out of my own experience in Vietnam. What better way to spend my retirement than to fly my airplane and pick up a wounded soldier or his family and get him home or bring his family to see him. there's easy things to talk about. There's something happening here that connects our generation with the next. I really appreciate that about the Vietnam vets, how they helped us. You know, they blazed a path to make sure we didn't end up the way they did. It kind of reminds you that the world is still good, you know? Not everybody's trying to blow you up. Not everyone's trying to kill you. There's still good left in it. You know, it's a sense of closure for me as well. Being able to do this for these young guys is in a sense being able to do it for ourselves. We get to experience vicariously what we never experienced.
We were moving into this house. I was plugging things in and I noticed immediately we were missing one of the main power cords. It just came out of left field. He just started, I could see like everything was just starting to boil over for him, and I hadn't seen him like that. I don't even know how I got to that point or how it happened. I didn't see it coming.
I couldn't check my email. Flashlight there.
I was just in shock. And I was just thinking, I can't live like this anymore.
It was nothing. After it was done, I told her I'd kill her. She's shaking, terrified out of her mind. I got in the shower, get ready for bed.
So I acted like everything was okay. And I waited until I got into the shower, and I called the police.
I wanted somebody to come all the time. I'd sit in the middle of the night waiting for them to come in the middle of the night, hoping they'd come. I got tired of waiting, worrying all the time when they're gonna come. Just come now, let's do it now.
And I told them, you know, we had 2 guns in the house.
I remember they sent 5 cops to come to my house. And I answered the door with a loaded gun.
And I was terrified because I didn't know how he would react.
I looked at my wife. She was crying. I looked out there and I saw those cop cars and those officers 6 inches away from me. I could have shot both of them through the door. They had no idea. And my kids are sleeping 10 feet behind me. That's when something clicked. Something changed. I looked at that pistol. I cleared it, put it on my bed, and I walked in there and I just told him, take me to jail. They said, do you know why you're going to jail? And he just put me in the back of the car and I had handcuffs on. I said, yeah, it's because I've got a problem.
A couple months later, I found myself in Menlo Park, California, at the National Center for PTSD. That's when I realized my sexual assault while I was deployed. I had buried it for 3 years up to that point. And you know, I think it was because I was hearing the stories from the other females that were there, and almost all of them had that happen, and you know, just all these memories just were flooding back. I was having to relive my trauma all over again from the start.
I didn't want to be home. I didn't want to be in the United States. I wanted to be back there because I wanted to be with my brothers. I wanted to be in my unit. I was able to call the Iridium phone. And of course, I called. And that day was when a good friend of mine and a whole bunch of other guys got killed by a suicide bomber.
Dealing with the survivor's guilt of making it through the deployment when they didn't, that weighs a lot heavier.
I lost one of my grenadiers on July the 11th, 1967. And it's you beat yourself up some, about, woulda, shoulda, couldas?
My roommate got hit and killed the same exact way, in the same exact spot, by the same exact person that blew me up a week earlier.
I was sad that I lost my dream leader. And, I was the gardener, so you always feel like you blame yourself for what happened.
He was a good friend of mine. We had plans. I was going to get my Harley. He was going to get his Harley. We were going to ride across country. We were going to do all this and all that. And then, like that, he's gone. It was just...
And then adding to the survivor's guilt, trying to reintegrate into civilian life.
See, that's what my father had, was survivor's guilt. And he didn't even know it because he never really talked about it. He didn't want to talk about it. Because to talk about it to him was rehashing old memories that he just didn't want to go there. But the fact of the matter is, the platoon that he done his boot camp training with up in Washington State, he lost all of them. Every single one of them during the Battle of the Bulge. And my father never wanted to discuss that. Because in his mind's eye, that was a way of seeing a solution to the problem, was by avoiding it and never discussing it again with nobody. And that was the wrong concept and the wrong criteria to go at something that dramatic. He actually needed to talk about his feelings and how that he felt about those men, and then how he felt about the situation after that he was told that all of them had died during the Battle of the Bulge. That would have been part of the healing process in facing your demons versus avoiding them. To me, avoiding your situation that you've been handed is kind of like putting a temporary band-aid on something, or kicking the can down the road and not actually dealing with it. That until you actually deal with that emotional stress issue, you really haven't dealt with it. Out of sight, out of mind only works to a certain degree on certain things. But then there's other things that happens in people's lives that they really need to bring it out. They really need to talk about it. They really need to face that particular situation and look at it through different lenses and different degrees. That way they can heal from the event that happened in their lives. As painful and as thoughtless and as heartless and as insensitive as it may sound, that is the best way. It's kind of like what the Bible talks about, that the truth will set you free. And the truth will set you free. Spiritually and emotionally speaking, as long as you face it in the right way, in understanding how come this occurred, what motivated this situation in it evolving the way that it evolved. And until you're willing to sit down and look through different lenses and look through different degrees, odds are, by you avoiding that particular situation that happened, you'll never get full closure until you take a different approach. once more, by using these scapegoats, by using these escape valves, is the only way to truly heal from that in which what has happened in one's life.
I stayed up at nights for a long time. For a while, I was like, why didn't I just die over there? Why didn't they just kill me? It would have been easier.
You come to realize you did the best you could do with the information you had at the time. And that gives you some peace. It gives me some peace about what happened, but it doesn't bring Clarence back.
I just want to do it for him, you know. He didn't make it back. I made it back. So I have a more obligation to push hard, to keep pushing. There's one thing I remember. I remember he was saying like, Freddy, don't stop shooting, keep shooting. And I remember that voice. Freddy, don't stop shooting. Freddy, don't stop shooting, keep shooting. That was right before I got into the RPG. I get my motivation from that.
This year's Hope and Possibility race to me, it does mean a lot because the last time that I did it was June of 2007. And I was still kind of early on in my injury phase, but this time I've been training to actually run a 5K.
Be able to represent the Achilles at the Hope of Possibility event this coming summer is going to be a great opportunity for me to see my recovery, to see how strong and how physically and mentally I have progressed.
Just to give back to Achilles and help mentor their guys and just kind of be a leader within the Achilles Freedom Team as well.
Motivate other guys just by seeing how fast and how strong and how well I've been doing. It's going to be a great satisfaction for me.
This is the first time that I'd ever tried talking with a professional about it. I walked in and the therapist was of Arab descent. And I walked in, saw him, walked right back out. I was like, there's no way in hell I'm going to talk to him about this. I made another appointment to go talk with a different therapist. She ended up being a civilian. First thought was, I was like, she's not even in the military. You know, she's never been deployed. She doesn't know what I'm going through. So, and then again, I turned around and walked right back out. I didn't get help for it for years and years after that. I never talked to a professional about it or got help. I just kind of balled it all up and dealt with it.
I had sold my motorcycle, and for 20 years didn't have one as I raised a family. Finally, I had enough therapy under my belt. Things got better. My wife at the time said, look, you got the money, you got the time. I'd heard of an organization called Run for the Wall. She says, why don't you buy a motorcycle and go on that ride? Probably some of the best advice that lady ever gave me. We take off, and by about the third day, I'm saying, holy crap, this ain't at all what I thought. I'm seeing an old World War II guy in a uniform standing out alongside of the road, saluting me. I start seeing people on overpasses. They got big signs up. This is the center of the United States. This is where I come from. Kansas and Missouri and Illinois. And people are standing out there saying, welcome home. We love you. Thank you. I'd never heard that before. The healing was definitely taking place.
And then after the war, it just, I didn't know who he was anymore. And I didn't know how to help him.
Chelsea filed for divorce. And so when I didn't contest it, I didn't try and fight it. Showed up 90 days later and we was divorced. I lost 2 of my kids, lost my house, and I lost my job. And it was just like being in Iraq all over again.
I had 2 miscarriages prior to Phoenix. And Patrick, I think after the 3rd pregnancy, he didn't think he was going to have his son. So when we hit the 3rd month, knowing that Phoenix is going to make it, we're going to pick Pierce. He goes, no, I need something that's different, that's meaningful. And he goes, Phoenix, rise from the ashes and live up to 500 years.
I did my applications, and lo and behold, I got into several, amazing places. Stanford seemed to be the best match. And so in August 2010, I showed up on the doorstep here, and I got introduced to Dr. Etkin and found the Dream Lab. One of the central themes guiding our own work in the lab is that we have a lot of ways to understand PTSD and a variety of treatments for it. But oftentimes, in fact, generally, they don't speak the same language. And the language we're trying to get them to speak is the language of the brain. And through that, be able to understand why it is that a treatment works for one person or another, guide a person who hasn't had a treatment to the best treatment for them, but also have a basis for understanding how do we do better. The most brilliant minds with the best institutions, the best equipment, best people, all leveraged at one exact goal. And in the military and principles of war, we call that mass, as the application of overwhelming power at a precise point. And that's what we're doing here, massing on PTSD.
When I returned home from Menlo Park, I wanted nothing to do with anyone else. I wanted nothing to do with the military. I wanted my focus to go into my passion, which was musical theater. So I moved to New York City. And I was connected with a retired Army colonel named Ann Wright, who was a strong activist for military sexual trauma. She had asked me to speak at a press conference in the middle of Times Square regarding military sexual trauma. And I was so scared. So I forced myself. In the middle of Times Square with all these people, staring at me. I just remember I was so upset. I pushed the attack so far from my mind that I was unwilling and unable to admit it even to myself up until 2 years ago. In doing my speech, even though I was upset, it was liberating. I finally have the courage and strength to say to you and to anyone who will hear me. My name is Staff Sergeant Sandra Lee, a soldier and a woman who was raped 5 years ago. But that does not define me. I'm not weak. I'm not stupid. I'm not ashamed and I am not shattered. And I will not be silenced anymore. We will not be silenced anymore. And I just remember just sobbing afterwards, and I felt a part of this weight and this tension that I had been holding for so long, just being released from that.
When I first started to consider the option of getting a service dog for post-traumatic stress, one of my first thoughts was, what's a dog going to do for me that I kind of can't make happen on my own? Or
what's there to lose, you're already kind of at your point to where medication's just not working for you. Counseling is not really, going to solve all your problems. There's got to be something out there that's going to make that change for you.
When I first got Atlas, and actually got him back to my house, and we started to kind of interact and build that bond, I thought it would actually keep people away from me a little bit, kind of help buffer me. I was dead wrong.
Instead of Atlas secluding him inside of a house like Kenny had wanted, he was bringing him out
and bringing so much attention to him that it kind of changed his perspective of things.
I didn't realize that that's exactly what I needed. You know, I kind of needed that social retraining.
A guy in my platoon sent me a copy of a video called Homecoming: A Vietnam Veteran's Journey. There's a very, very interesting piece chronicling this thing called Run for the Wall across the country. One of the guys really struck a nerve with me. J.R. Franklin.
People contacted me who had seen the documentary and thanked me for what I had had to say, or said that they could relate to something that I had said in there. When I'm driving down a road, I would be constantly looking for where the ambush site was.
Talked about when he came back to the States, how when he was driving down the road, he would be constantly looking for places where people would be setting up ambushes. And man, that hit me like a ton of bricks, because I had the exact same feeling riding down the roads just where I lived in Pennsylvania.
I saw the potential of reaching other veterans, that they might find the same healing experience that I found on the run.
And if it's helped him, I think it could help me. And that's when I started exploring going on Run for the Wall. And I made my first journey in 2006, and it was the best decision I've made in my life about treating myself for what happened to me in Vietnam.
And I think of it as addicting people to achievement. If you've lost a leg or two and you're doing a marathon, that's really special. And what happens is you come out, you succeed, and you say, my goodness, what else can I do? What's my next goal?
It feels pretty good to be back in New York. I did this New York Hoping Possibilities 5K. I did it in 2007, which was just a year after my injury, so it brings back a lot of memories.
I'm really excited to be back in New York. We normally don't have that many races in New York, so every time I do something in New York, I really get excited.
My goal of being here today is just to, complete this. I just had another major operation. I just had surgery 56. I did training for this. I've been doing training, up until my surgery, but I needed that surgery at that moment in time.
You get more joy out of helping others than you did out of doing it yourself. So that many of the people who come out here and have been with us a few years help others, and this is really ecstasy.
Oh, these guys are great. Every time I see those guys, I get pumped up, I get fired up just to see like some of these guys fresh out of the hospital. They're already here doing this, Mark? And it's just me moving forward, one motion, just moving forward, me, my bike, and myself. It's just moving forward. I feel strong, I feel powerful. I feel like I'm invisible, like it's still the same. Like, guess what? Yeah, you get injured, but you're doing it, and you're pushing forward, and I don't feel disabled.
I kind of was down on myself, the whole having surgeries and being back on pain medicine and just being in bed and having to rely on somebody. Couldn't have been a better time. I just walked 5 miles when I'm not supposed to, so.
We all have some kind of disability. Whether you're missing a leg or missing an arm or you are completely able-bodied, we all have some type of disability. It's just that we can see it, Sometimes in your heart, sometimes up here.
Having a sense of home is critical to recovery in PTSD. People feel quite displaced after trauma. This is tied in with losing your identity, not knowing who you are anymore, getting that back as part of your home. It's not that you go back to a place you were before trauma. These things have to be rebuilt, and hopefully in healthier ways.
I still sleep with my phone every night just in case there's a call in the middle of the night, because he has called in the middle of the night when the demons come out crying because his brain was screwed up. He didn't understand this, and he hurt, and just everything was closing in on him.
I don't consider this living. I'm trapped. I might as well be in a 6x8 cell.
My son has not come home in a big way.
But when you've left so much of yourself on the battlefield, where else can you call home?
To know that he can't find home, that hurts. That hurts.
I heard the gunshot and I went out and I found my husband dead. It was a hope, but not anymore. And that was a nightmare. I would sit in the living room, I would see him come down the step and just say, I'm sorry. Or there's nights where I sleep and I wake up and I see his body. This has become a place where he died, memories. It's somewhere I kind of not want to be if I want to move on. I can't move on and know that it's here, I'm going to remember the good things, but I don't need it, I don't need it in my face about the bad things.
It's completely unacceptable, and it's appalling what our veterans experience. How the hell is a brain-injured, beaten down, frustrated, tired service member supposed to cut through all that crap? It almost sometimes seems like the government makes it so difficult that the veterans give up. Based on the knowledge I'd acquired and being a pissed off mom with knowledge, knowing for a fact that a lot of the guys did not have the luxury of a mom or anybody to advocate for them. It was just a natural fit for me to continue doing for others what I did for him. So my son is the inspiration for Wounded Heroes Program of Maine. It's heartbreaking, it's difficult. You have to have broad shoulders. You don't want to piss off Mama Bear, all right? You're gonna lose.
His buddy, who was also a former Marine, mentioned to him, Kenny, now that Atlas is around, do you have any intentions of doing something with him?
This is a continuation of my mission, that oath. You never leave a man behind, and whether it's on the battlefield or whether it's home.
And they created Battle Buddy.
There's a reason why we call it the Battle Buddy Foundation. When you're in combat, you don't ever go anywhere without your battle buddy.
The Battle Buddy Foundation started off with certain things that they wanted to do, having service logs out there for other veterans. But I don't think he understood that while getting into it and while building the organization, it's healing him inside because he knows he's not alone and there's other people out there to help.
I wondered what my real mission in life was, and this is really given a value. This is given a purpose.
He was given this responsibility for a reason.
There was a reason for all that pain and all that struggle. There was a reason for, all those dark nights. There was a reason for, the pain that my family's gone through.
I think he feels like he's got a place. This is where he can walk in and hang his hat. I think he feels like this is home now.
He had the stroke in July. Members of his group were devastated to see him after his stroke, where he wasn't even as recognizable.
War is hell, there's no two ways about it. It takes away your innocence, and there's no way you can get it back.
He was not afraid of dying, but he was afraid of hell because of what he had done. He had killed so many people that he had broken every commandment in the Bible.
Anytime you kill your fellow man, you know it's wrong. You ask forgiveness every way you know how.
The other day, he said, it's okay. I don't feel very good, but I'm going to be okay because I'm going to a better place soon.
I'm not a huge spiritual man. What really boosted my spirituality and my belief in God was when I did get blown up that night. And it wasn't my time. So he sent me back. Being an outdoorsman, I find peace just in the outdoors in general. You know, that's when I'm closest with God. That's when I feel most at home in this civilian world. There's nothing that's ever going to take place of the battlefield. That's where I belong. That's where I need to die.
It makes me wish, thinking back to the Halloween costume, that I could turn back time and keep his visions of what a soldier really is, pure. Everything he envisioned it to be, but without the pain.
My time's coming someday, I don't know when. Never expected to live to be 90 years old. Sometimes I spend quite a little time in here. It just makes me think of stuff that is impossible to forget. Things happen that ain't gonna go away as long as I live. I've already lived a lot longer than I ever expected to. I really hope I've been a good example to many of them.
It's like nonstop. I mean, we got up this morning at 4 o'clock. We probably will get to bed tonight at maybe 9, and then get up at 4 o'clock in the morning again and do it all over. For 10 days, we do this. We're home. The beautiful thing is we actually get to be together on the run. I mean, there are a lot of guys out there who just leave their wives at home because their wives don't want to ride. So I don't know, we kind of play off each other. You know, she'll be there when I'm having a rough day or something, and I'll be likewise there for her if she's having something happen in her life. So it's great. We just support each other all the way across the run.
Working on the Run for the Wall together is just wonderful. To me, it bonds us together even more. It's a good feeling to know that we're both trying to give back in whatever way we can.
I love seeing her ride, and she loves seeing me ride, and we're just kind of like soulmates, really.
I was divorced for 13 years before I met John. So I felt that when John and I got married, that it was a second chance that God gave me to have another good marriage.
I have a one-on-one relationship with God right now, as does Diane, and together we're glued together by that relationship. And I'm not going to let go of that, and she's not either. So I have every confidence in the world that I have found home. I'm home, whether it's this house or Timbuktu or Colorado or Montana or wherever it is.
As people start to realize that they have something that can get treated, it's a long process. Nobody goes into complete remission and has a cure.
The price of freedom, of the influence of PTSD in my life, is a constant awareness on my part of what's going on for me.
The war will not be won now with respect to PTSD. It's something that we need to be vigilant over decades for these folks and everybody who comes after them.
By embracing the treatment of PTSD, I have become a much more effective individual in everything that I do. Because of that, many others benefit. I'm not sure where my life is going to lead with all of this, but if I can make one veteran breathe easier because of the knowledge that I have, then according to Emerson, I have succeeded.
Since Brandon was injured just over 6 years ago, the anxiety, the worry, the panic, it doesn't go away.
Whenever I see my mom struggling, worrying about me, I mean, it kind of makes me feel like crap because I don't want to be like a burden on anyone. I don't want anyone to have to worry about me.
I feel a huge sense of loss because I feel like I've lost my son.
Seeing my mom struggle and my mom worry about me, it makes me want to get better to where no one will have to worry about me or worry about like what I'm doing or where I'm at or where I'm going.
I know my son's still in there. But I think as much as I want to take everything away and make everything okay, the best thing I can do for him is just be there for him and let him know that I love him no matter what, and I'll always be there for him.
Says my mom is special. My mom is special because she loved me, she hugged me, she kissed me. I like it when my mom helps me. Had I not said enough to you? Had I said too much? Had I said too little? Had I not prayed enough? Had he not prayed? What could I have done? And you want to blame somebody. Somebody's taken your child from you, even if it's at their own hand. Was it really at their own hand? I don't believe that it was. I believe that he just didn't know. Because the Patrick that I raised is giving and caring and would have thought of himself last. Not first, but last.
It's not that they want to die. They just want this excruciating emotional pain to stop. In the war zone, there's a solution to your problem, and that is eliminate the opposition.
The warrior was the one that protected the village, protected the families, and basically that's what the Warrior Society does to this community.
My mom and dad were introduced there by my grandpa. When they met there, my mom and dad were married there. I went to my first dance when I was 2 weeks old there. I met my wife there, and I asked her to marry me there. We say that the drum beat is the heartbeat of our people, of our culture. That place is the heartbeat of the culture for me. And then here now I am, all these years later, I'm a member of the society.
The powwow that's happening today, and Apache is the head singer there. One of the things that circle does is it's a circle of healing. It's not just a place for dancing.
In that place, when I close my eyes and I sing those songs, I hear that drum, and I can feel that energy. I can feel the heartbeat, the life of our people there.
It was good to see my brother in the inner circle and singing. I mean, it was a good honor, a great honor.
It also makes Apache, I'm sure, feel part of his dad's still with him.
When my dad was alive and he was sitting over there watching me, we were sitting at that drum, same spot as me. Singing that song, to close my eyes, to put every bit of emotion, every bit of thought, every bit of anything that I have, all of myself into that song. There's nothing else. There's no Iraq. There's no memories. There's no nightmares. There's no divorce. There's that moment, that one moment, and I'm truly free. I'm truly alive. And I'm invincible. You don't go to war and leave the war, you go to war. It's just the battlefield changes. When you come home, there's plenty of other wars to fight. There's plenty of other battles that's gonna lie ahead.
Expedition. I've come to southern Oman to find the last strongholds of some of the world's rarest wildlife. You've got to be on your guard every single second in this environment.
That is a long, long way.
This is genuinely frightening stuff. Wow! This place is alive. These last truly wild places are incredibly exciting.
Expedition. Tune in or stream Wednesday at 10/9 Central, only on PBS.
KET is supported in part by the O. Leonard Press Society, including Reverend George H. Schumacher.
For 50 years.
There's so much in this world we can learn, no matter how young or how old we are.
The faces have changed.
Wasn't that terrific?
Bon appetit!
Unbelievable. The places have changed.
I want them to love me.
The world has changed.
Landing a man on the moon before this decade is out?
What a wonderland we found.
But our vision stays the same.
Whoa. This is an incredible story.
What defines us is our minds and our hearts.
This is all possible because of physics.
Whoa! Yes!
It's really part of our mission to make sure communities across the country are safer.
Thank you.
I have chills. What an amazing family.
The world keeps moving.
We're going further than we've ever gone before.
But our mission never wavers.
How about that?
Always seeking.
This is totally amazing.
What's next?
I was raised to believe, despite where I came from,
that I could literally be anything I wanted to be.
Stay curious.
Next time on Father Brown.
I give you Isabella.
During an exhibition, the art is defaced and a man is nearly killed.
You were the intended victim.
But when the artist's nanny is murdered,
Any more crimes in this place and we'll need to take up residency.
Father Brown thinks it's all related to a dead muse.
Whoever the murderer is, Isabella seems to be at the center of it all.
Father Brown.
Thursday, 10/9 Central on KET.
The world of Downton Abbey, indelibly etched into our memories.
There's never a dull moment in this house.
Characters we can't forget.
I'm John Bates, the new valet.
Twists and turns we couldn't stop talking about.
I won't allow it.
Marigold is my daughter.
I'm Alan Leach, also known as Tom Branson. Please join us for our marathon of all 6 seasons of Downton Abbey. You won't want to miss it.
Downton Abbey Marathon, beginning Friday, 9:30, 8:30 Central.
This month in Passport, your on-demand library of the best of PBS.
None of us can imagine what they went through in their short lives. Welcome to Windermere. Welcome.
East Lake Meadows was just like heaven to us until it became a nightmare.
This is like no workshop I've ever gone to.
These and other shows are available with Passport. Become a member of this PBS station, sign in, and start streaming today. KET, where learning comes to life.
There are small towns hidden all over the United States. They perch in the shadow of mountains and along creek beds, amid hills and valleys that haze in and out of the mind. These are places that carry forward a clear memory of those who marked its soil with sacrifice. It's written in bronze and stone, and on the faces of those tasked with the remembering. Garland Merle Connor is a hero. That much is without debate. For 28 consecutive months, he stood on the front line using hot iron and steel to push back the Axis powers from the tip of Africa to the heart of the German death machine. But time and memory get tricky in the fog of war. And as it is true that every veteran is a hero, it is also true that every war forgets, to some extent, which heroes waged it and how. Dear Mother, as I guess you have heard the bad news, Japan has declared war. I don't know yet when or where we will go, but we are looking to move out any minute. Tell Paul and all the children hello and to be good. If Clay and I live through this war, which I think we will, we'll be at home someday. Best of luck and wishes to y'all from Merle Connor. December 7th, 1941.
The Tunisian front, a quagmire of mud. Here, mobile guns and armored units of the British General Montgomery's 8th Army move over practically non-existent roads in their relentless drive to throw the Nazis out of North Africa.
Merle Connor serves as a member of the Army's 3rd Infantry Division and goes ashore at Fadala, French Morocco, on November 8, 1942. From there, the 3rd Division pushes through North Africa, and by the following spring, moves through Sicily to the Italian mainland, where the fighting is intense, and where Connor will begin to distinguish himself on the battlefield as a soldier unwavering in his commitment and skill.
He was a combination of Kit Carson and Davy Crockett. He was an expert shot. He could go through the woods undetected. He did his scouting by himself because it's safer that way.
He was a true woodsman. He could do things that you'd never think of, that we took for granted a lot being country people, Merle just had that good, common knowledge of things. We was coming across up at Doc Barnes's one night, an old log road, and Merle said, "There's a poison snake up here." He said, "Just keep walking." I said, "How you know it's poison, Merle?" He said, "You can tell when you get up here. It smells like cucumbers." And sure enough, when I got up there, you could smell it. I just kept on walking. Didn't know where it was at, but I could smell it. Never forgot it.
Merle's talent with a rifle and his keen sense of direction make for strong qualities in a soldier.
You have to be an intense hunter. Not everybody's an intense hunter. You have to be a patient hunter. You have to know what you're doing. And Merle had all those attributes.
If you're going to be killing Germans, you have to be an expert marksman or they kill you. It's war is war,
Merle first gains recognition for his special skills in October 1943 in Italy as the 3rd Division attempts to cross the Volturno River under heavy German fire. The bridges are destroyed, forcing the Allied soldiers to improvise.
I think that was probably Merle's first intense combat, I'm not sure. But you learn faster, you don't learn at all.
Connor's responsibility as a communications sergeant is to help prevent German forces from breaking the Allied line. During the battle, he notes that part of the Army platoon is separated from the United Front, thus weakening the defense. What he does next will become a recurring aspect of his military service. Sergeant Connor, on his own initiative, and with utter disregard for personal safety, took control of the situation, giving orders and making successful placement of men in the weakened lines, and giving invaluable first aid to many of our wounded who were unable to be evacuated at the moment. This action earns Merle Connor the Silver Star, the Army's 3rd highest decoration for valor in combat. It is the first of many awards Merle Connor will receive in over 2 years of fighting. He will earn a Distinguished Service Cross, a Bronze Star, 3 oak leaf clusters to the Silver Star, and multiple Purple Hearts, putting him alongside Audie Murphy as one of the most highly decorated soldiers in World War II. But these achievements, as impressive as they are, do not make for a Medal of Honor. It is not awarded for a body of work. Instead, it recognizes a specific act of conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of life above and beyond the line of duty. That single act looms ahead for Merle Connor. The place, a barren field just west of Usen, France. But before all of that, before Usen and the terrible French countryside, there is another battle that will affect and ultimately help preserve the legacy of Merle Connor. In January 1944, the 3rd Infantry Division launches a surprise attack near Anzio on Italy's western coast.
There's a lot of men died on Anzio. A lot of men died. Bloody Anzio, they call it.
The Allies are trapped there for months. It is bloody, terrible fighting. According to historian Hugh Ridenauer, Merle Connor actually encountered Audie Murphy during these early days of the Anzio campaign. One night, Murphy, on patrol with 4 men, stopped by Connor's headquarters, located in a cave, to ask if Connor had any information on enemy positions in the area. It is not known what was said between the two distinguished soldiers, but Connor likely knew the terrain well. His K Company is tasked with clearing Germans from Cisterna, house by house, and on the night of January 30th, his regiment runs into a well-fortified German position. Connor decides to organize and lead an assault, as stated by the citation to his 1st Oak Leaf Cluster to the Silver Star. Taking a bazooka team and 2 rifle grenadiers with him, Technical Sergeant Connor leads the way across 50 yards of exposed terrain and openly directs such effective fire on the enemy at 25 yards range that 1 machine gun and 2 machine pistols are silenced, and the crew of a 4th automatic weapon is routed.
Everybody that touches me was impressed by me. Yeah. And if you want to save your life, go out with Merle. Don't go out with anybody else. He could smell him. He could smell the enemy. He could feel the enemy.
At one point during the Anzio campaign, Merle stops his platoon and suddenly wades out alone into the tall grass.
So all of a sudden they heard the machine gun fire. They rushed in. He was bleeding profusely. He had broken up an ambush that could have killed all of them.
And although he still had orders to remain there to recuperate and stay at the hospital, he went AWOL. He left, slipped off on his own, hitched a ride back to the front lines.
And those that served under him said we were always safe with him. When we went with him, we knew we weren't going to get ambushed. And they never did.
Much of what Merle learned about hunting, leadership, and marksmanship, he learned back home in the wilds of southern Kentucky.
But you know, it was hard, but yet it was good. We was good kids. We minded and all. My dad sure set a good example in front of Merle.
Lee and Tanna Connor had 11 children, 7 boys and 4 girls. Merle's father taught him to hunt at an early age, as he did with Merle's brothers, 4 of whom also served in World War II. But Merle wouldn't join the Army with his brothers. Instead, he would join with his childhood best friend, a young man named Johnny Ray Cooksey.
Johnny Ray Cooksey and my dad grew up together down on Indian Creek. And I'm sure they hunted together. And I don't know if my dad drunk very much or not. If they're drunk, they're probably drunk together. And they joined the Civilian Conservation Corps. Both of them grew up during the Depression. CCC was a Depression-era program that Roosevelt had started. And they went to Oregon. And either the job was over or they were furloughed. For some reason, they came back to Clinton County. And they enlisted in the Army. My dad was inducted in March 1941. Johnny Ray, I think, was inducted at the same time.
Like many things in Merle Connor's life, the exact nature of his enlistment is a mystery.
One day someone asked him why he joined, and he said, well, a judge gave us a choice of laying out a little time in jail or joining the Army. And later on, some of my uncles told me my dad and Johnny Ray were involved in a little escapade at a church revival.
Merle Connor left his home to fight a war beside his best friend. He would never see that friend again.
My dad came back. Johnny Ray did not. He was killed in action. And I always thought that was part of the reason that my dad didn't want to talk about a lot of his war experience.
And then he saw so many people getting killed that he felt like that what he'd done was small rather than losing your own life.
People who have seen combat up close know what it truly is and tend to shoulder the burden of that knowledge alone. Merle Connor didn't talk much about his service, and his story was almost lost to time as a result. But a story doesn't end when a man dies. It ends when the men and women who come after finish telling it. It's a curious fact that many stories begin with someone seemingly unconnected to the story being told. In this instance, the person is Gordy Roberts, and the story begins with the proud nephew who looks up to him.
He was dedicated and a good man, a very good man, very charitable, and I want to know more about him.
Gordy had died in 1944 during Bloody Anzio. Few details were sent home with his body, and in 1995, Richard, himself a decorated Green Beret, begins contacting the surviving members of the 3rd Infantry Division. But few remember his uncle.
I went through maybe 100 veterans, nothing, one left. I almost didn't write to him. And I did, and he said, I knew your uncle, I was with him when he died. And that's all Merle ever said from that day on.
Merle Connor had been Gordy's platoon sergeant and promises to shed more light on his death in subsequent letters. But those letters never arrive. Merle's health is failing, and his loved ones understand the end is near.
The last 3 or 4 years my dad was alive was much of a challenge for everyone because he had Parkinson's. My mother never did have to put him in a nursing home, so we was able to keep him here at home.
But he himself wanted the feeding tube. He told him to go ahead and put it in there. And he lived 5 years longer with that than he would have had he not had it put in.
And if he hadn't done that, he never would have met Richard Chilton, would he?
No, he never would have met Richard Chilton. That's exactly right.
I had no intention to come to Kentucky. I came there to pay my respects. That was it.
He stayed about a half a day with us, talking to him. And we found out that Merle was the one that had carried Gordon on his shoulder back to the aid station where Gordon eventually died.
He should not have known my uncle. I don't know anybody from Korea. It's amazing. 50 years later, how many men went through his unit? Why would he remember Gordon? I don't know that answer. I'll never know it. But he should not have remembered him.
The more the two combat veterans remember, the more difficult it becomes.
So he started to cry out of control. So I took the lead. And Miss Connor said, I want to show you something. And Pauline brought out that box.
It's a small box, about a foot in length, and more suited to jewelry than what it has held for nearly 50 years. Pauline sets it down with great care, as if not to disturb the ghosts inside. These are his medals, she says, and as Richard takes them out, one by one, he is overcome.
I said, why didn't anybody ever put him in for a Medal of Honor? She says, nobody would. She said, so nobody would. She said, but would you do it? Would you help me? I don't know where I'm going with this. So the poor woman had a tear on her eye. I said, well, yeah, I'll help you all I can. So that's how I started this, see. But I had never come there for any intention like that to do that.
Chilton leaves Kentucky determined to do whatever necessary to get Merle Connor the Medal of Honor. What he doesn't know is that Connor was supposed to have received it 40 years before. From General Lloyd Ramsey, upon Merle's discharge in 1945.
I just sent one of my officers home. To my way of seeing, he's one of the outstanding soldiers of this war, if not the outstanding. He has the DSC, which could have been, I believe, a Congressional Medal of Honor. But he was heading home, and we wanted to get him what he deserved before he left. I have never seen a man with as much courage and ability as he has. He's a real soldier.
General Ramsey would contact Merle different occasions and ask him why didn't he go ahead and apply for that Medal of Honor, because General Ramsey was wounded himself and couldn't make the paperwork out like it should have been to give it to him himself.
And he said why he didn't do it. He said, I was just too busy doing other things. He said, I was a battalion commander of 900 men. We were in heat of battle. I'd just been wounded. I just didn't have time to do that. And he said, secondly, I didn't realize that there were other eyewitnesses. And to get the Medal of Honor, you have to have that.
Richard Chilton doesn't yet know about the lack of eyewitness accounts, but he does understand how crucial it is to preserve the stories of our veterans before they're lost to time. Merle Connor helped him preserve the story of his uncle. Now he will help preserve the story of Merle Connor. He begins, as many activists do, by writing.
I wrote to 7 generals, and they're all happy to come on board. But 22,000 men out of the 82nd Airborne, they came on board, and all these people came on board. They saw what this was.
He was doing sort of a grassroots appeal. Wrote senators, I think wrote the president. He got resolutions passed by 5 or 6 states recommending that the upgrade be made. And Richard made a number of visits to schools.
These boxes contain several thousand letters written by school students asking the president to award this Medal of Honor.
When I started this, a member of my paratroop unit said, Rich, all loyal soldier has all the merits of the Medal of Honor. They won't give it to him. Get a building named after him or something else, but they won't give it to him.
Dealing with these kind of things is so complicated and takes so long in some cases. It goes through, first of all, so many hands that it's hard for them to say, we made a mistake.
They were pretty blunt, and they needed to be, that, you know, you're wasting your time, because even though the soldier deserves the upgrade clearly from his record, you know, this just doesn't happen.
I know a time or two Richard would get very upset, and he'd write me and say, that stupid person didn't even look at my letter. He called Garland Sergeant Garland M. Connor instead of Lieutenant. Said he never even read my letter.
Richard's frustration only intensifies as his appeals to the proper military authorities repeatedly fail. Responsibility for upgrading awards falls to the Army Board for Correction of Military Records, a 3-person military panel whose stated mission is to correct errors in or remove injustices from Army records. Richard applies multiple times on behalf of Garland Merle Connor and is denied every time.
I've had a stubborn streak in me that's pretty deep. I actually felt that sooner or later they're going to tell me to quit writing, they're going to throw me in jail. I really thought I was getting on thin ground, you know, because I was pretty persistent.
Well, he was denied. Every time he tried to do anything, it was denied. And then Merle passed away in November the 5th, 1998. And Richard contacted me and wanted to know if I wanted him to continue it. And I said, Richard, it's up to you, whatever you want to do. If you want to continue it, go ahead and do what you can do. But Richard said, well, I want to make sure he gets it if I can.
I wish I'd known some of this when I was growing up. I mean, there's a story to be told. I don't know if we needed to have bragged on it. My dad should have shared his story when he was alive.
I came up here one day and they dug that grave and they had dirt, mud all over that. I didn't do nothing but sit down and bawl my eyes out, and then I got to thinking, somebody's going to clean it off. I just wish he's here with me.
Of course, I started learning bits and pieces as they worked on this. You know, growing up, you know, I'd have been 40 years old when they first started this, had absolutely no idea that my father had done any of these things.
I knew some of the things because when they had the parade in his honor, when he first came back from service, I learned some things about him then.
I was in my dad's store when Merle Connor came through town, parading through to go to the courthouse, a little fella. And my dad said, hey, he was a hero, said he did a lot of A lot of heroic things in the war.
I was, of course, 15 years old, and I was wondering about what all I had heard about him. I kept asking my mother, where is he? I wanted to see him because I'd heard so much about him. And I was standing on a bench in the back of the courthouse when Merle got up to make his speech. I told my mother, I said, my God, that little wharf rat couldn't have done all they said he'd done. He's too small because he just weighed about 120 pounds. It's past that barn.
Past the barn.
Yeah. And we walked down that little dirt road from 76 down here to church. We'd come just about every night because it's something for us to do. We didn't have no TV. Yonder it is. Fairview Methodist
United Methodist Church.
Yeah. It's a little church where I first met Merle. Back then, we didn't have any place to go except to the little churches where they had revivals. And then one night, Merle's cousin came in and tapped me on the back and said that Lieutenant Connor wanted to take me home. I said, I can't. My mama would kill me. Grady said, Merle said he'd drive real slow and wait on your sister and brother. He wouldn't take you home before they got there. So I said, okay. So that was our first date. Well, it went on for about 2 weeks. Mother told me, she said, you tell him that this is his last day that he's supposed to be here because he's too old for you. He's getting too serious. He said, well, let's just go get married. And I said, go get married? Yes, let's just go get married. But Merle, I ain't got no clothes. Well, I'll buy you some. In fact, when I ran off to get married, my dress was made out of a feed sack. Bless his heart. I don't believe people could survive now like we did back then. I washed clothes on a tub with a washboard, and I heated water outside in a black kettle to do my laundry with. I had a wood cook stove. Merle would go squirrel hunting, and then of a night sometimes him and Al and Lyman would go coon hunting. Now I cooked one time for Merle, but he just one bite out of it, and he said he didn't want that stuff. I also cooked him a possum, and that thing I couldn't even stand to look at it, much less eat it.
I can remember going to get a drink of water in the winter, and had to chip the ice loose in the bucket. The old house had a fireplace in it that was heated. You'll have to ride with Rex now, because that's his place right there. My dad's farm consisted of 3 or 4 acres of tobacco. He had about 30 to 40 cows. He'd have 10 brood sows to raise feeder pigs from. He raised chickens. I like to say that I grew up on an organic farm and didn't know what it was. So we got 11 eggs today. Yes, it's a hard-working household. We had fun. My mother and dad had the first TV in the community. Neighbors would come in. We'd fix a big bowl of popcorn. And went to town once a week, Saturday afternoon, go to town. And if things were good, we went to the old drugstore and you got an ice cream float. When was this picture made? One right there on the wall.
Oh, well, we was pretty young. I can't remember.
Well, that was after I left home. And then another gentleman, she'll have to tell you the story on this. Who did send you this?
He's a guy that lives away. I can't remember what his name is right now, but I've heard from him quite often. And he sent me this, which I always said I don't aim to give up as long as I feel like there's a chance to get the medal for Papa, and I didn't. I just let them work as long as they could work on it.
Dear applicant,
I regret to inform you that the Army Board for Correction of Military Records has denied your application. This decision is final.
I was at a stalemate after 6 years. You can't do this alone. You have to have at least 2 people.
Fortunately, Richard's work continues to reach new ears and open new eyes to an injustice that for some hits very close to home.
Since Byron Crawford wrote this article in 2000, so when I started, I said, well, I know that fella. Lives right up the road. I knew he'd done something in the war, but didn't know what. Nobody else did. I started to help Richard Chilton. And here these 12 boxes are part of his mission. He wrote me all these letters. He couldn't spell right and couldn't write very much, but he knew what he wanted to say.
The two men complement one another perfectly. Chip Haddix has an eye for research and protocol that goes beyond Chilton's pugnacious resolve. Chip understands that for the board to turn back an old decision, they will have to bring something new to the table.
Chip is unique, a bit of an activist, and if he is interested in something, he is totally dedicated to it.
For 8 years, I operated a little H&R Block tax office over there next to McDonald's. And tax season just lasted about 4 or 5 months. So the rest of the 6 months, that's all I did for about 6 years, is generate this stuff. We had 2 or 3 copy machines. H&R Block paid for it, I guess, is their copy machines.
But he was so committed to this, he was researching and making a convincing case.
I think it was Walton who kept the momentum going when everything looked bleak and everything looked like it wasn't going to happen, and when Army bureaucracy seemed to be overwhelming.
But you know, in the end, we put Merle out there so much, and that's where we reached. We reached him because we kept his name out there, because we reached the people who do care.
Grow the young child in earnest. Grow the young child with ease. Strip free the tumult, the heartache and misery. Take the new world as you please. 'Cause die as young for the old. Old age is death for the young. Rest from his grip, the agent's mercy. Die like the world's only son.
As the Army 3rd Division roars through southern France, Merle Connor battles for his survival. The fighting is intense, the weather harsh, and the food scarce.
Remember, it was 0 and sub-zero temperatures there. The ground is going to be frozen. They are constantly moving, and the Germans are resisting. The Germans are putting up the big effort because they realize that they're moving, they're coming into Germany.
But just what he had to do to survive. As I get older and realize now they've got ways to drop food, and they've got rations and things that they can deliver to them instantly. Probably wasn't that way in the 1940s.
The Germans generally blow up all the best buildings before you can whip them out. I was almost captured once in a French farmhouse. We got in the house without any trouble, then they started to attack from all sides. I put the farmer and his family in the cellar, and then we manned our guns. They shot out all the windows. They managed to take the first floor. Well, we really had a battle for that house. When the smoke cleared, we had dead Germans piled 3 deep. Of course, that wasn't new to us. It happens all along.
One of the few things that my dad ever said about scavenging as they were going through the countryside, if they found a cow that had a calf, they would milk the cow. But they would try to leave the calf. And he said for two reasons. The people that were there were devastated because of the war, but he said we might have to come back. We thought we might have to come back that way, and we might need that cow's milk again.
Despite the conditions and the escalating threat, Sergeant Connor remains a soldier known for his leadership and courage.
When you go across an open area, and if I had a lower rank, they tell me take the point. Merle took the point. When Colonel Rathburn, another man who fell in love with Merle, sent him out on, I needed a man to go out on patrol, so he asked for a squad of them. Merle showed up. Well, what am I going to do? I can't get anybody else, so he sent Merle out. But he told Merle one day, he said, no, I don't understand why you take the point. Well, they'll be excited, they'll be nervous, they won't be too accurate. You've been wounded 6 or 7 times, it's not working. It's not working.
Merle had received 2 Purple Hearts well before stepping into the fearsome French countryside. But in this late stage of the European campaign, with Allied forces barreling east toward Berlin and the Third Army clawing up the Rhone Valley, it seems a requirement that every man leave a piece of himself behind to mark their advance.
He was wounded one time, he could have lost his life. And they crossed the river to find out where the Germans were. They were right there, a whole bunch of them. So he dove back into the river, the Germans shot him. He was sinking below the water. Pulled him out of the water, laid him on the bank and took off. Merle said, I didn't hate him so much after that. That could have been the end of Merle.
He was shot through the thigh on the inside of his leg, and it went out his hip joint.
He had a hole in his hip that you could see.
I mean, you could put your fist in it, she said.
And he also carried a tooth with him. A piece of shrapnel went through his jaw here and knocked his tooth out.
Someone asked him one time about one of the shots, and he said, I forget now what he called it, said they got a little closer than they needed to be.
The wounds and the suffering would stay with him for the rest of his life. But like many veterans, Merle Connor chose to turn his experience into something that could help others.
After he got sick and he couldn't work on the farm no more, he turned it over to Paul. And we got involved in doing service work for veterans, and he really enjoyed that.
Those living in Albany at the time remember a notice played frequently on AM radio.
Merle Connor, a representative of the Disabled American Veterans, will be at the Clinton County Courthouse in Albany from 9 to noon on Saturday to assist veterans and their dependents with claims for benefits due them as a result of their military service.
Here was this man who deserved the Medal of Honor, did heroic acts, came home, back to Kentucky, got married, had family, and chose to serve in a different capacity. That just speaks volumes to me. He starts to help other veterans and military personnel with their